today's session is all about a new capability within Mongoose called conversation resolution, folks. And we are very excited for this one. It is designed to help your teams instantly see which conversations need attention, take action, and close the loop, basically. So, in other words, we're helping to ensure that no conversation slips through the cracks here. So, I want to introduce you guys to our speakers, but first, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping. You can use the chat anytime to share your thoughts, insights, where you're seeing success. For any questions, please use the Q&A panel. We'll leave time at the end to address as many as we can live. And of course, this session is being recorded. You can always go back and rewatch it. We'll send out the recording link shortly after. And if you're on social media, we'd love for you to join the conversation using hashtag Mongoose and share your takeaways or favorite insights as we go. So I do want to introduce our speakers, but first, before I do that, I've got John over here. You've probably seen him from our other Mongoose User Group webinars. He was the product manager on this project. So John can help with Q&A. He can help with chat. He'll be over there helping out. But then on the other side, I've got Josie Sutcliffe, who's our VP of Marketing, who will share kind of how this feature really ties into the broader conversation intelligence platform and the value that it brings. And then also, I'm actually really stoked to have Matt Baker here. Matt is the Associate VP of Product here at Mongoose, and he'll be kind of walking you through the product side of conversation resolution and kind of showing really what it looks like in action. So together they'll walk through the why, the how, and the impact of the new capability. So with that, I'll hand it over and we'll go ahead and get started.
Hey, thanks, Dylan. So, hi, everyone. Great to be here today joining you for this Mongoose User Group. So I'm going to run through just what our agenda is for the rest of this call. But as I do that, I'm going to ask Dylan to pop up a quick poll for you, which is going to ask you whether or not you've tried using the conversation resolution capability yet. So why don't you answer that while I just take you through the agenda. So we're going to start off and spend a few minutes talking about conversation intelligence, what we mean by that term and concept, and how you can be thinking about it for your own institution. And then we'll get into this conversation resolution capability. Matt's going to jump in here, take you through it, as well as actually show it to you live in the product. And then we'll wrap up with some links to some key resources for you. So that will be the gist of the webinar today. There was already a question in the Q&A that I will quickly answer, which is conversation resolution is not something we are asking you to subscribe to for some additional fee. This is included in your Mongoose subscription. So if you're subscribed to the Mongoose platform, you now have access to everything we're about to show you. All right, so let's see. The results were, I'm not sure if everyone is seeing the results here or if I'm the only one that can see them. Okay, everyone can see them, which is that most of you haven't yet used this capability. So I'm actually kind of excited to hear that because I hope that after this webinar, you will all be inspired and go off and click into this for your own teams and organization and just start to experience the powerful insights that you're going to be getting. All right, so let's start by just giving you a little bit of context setting with conversation intelligence. So conversation intelligence is a concept that we started talking about at Mongoose a little bit less than a year ago. And so you've been hearing us use that term now through this year. So I wanted to take a few minutes to just explain a little bit more what we mean by this and why this is really relevant to you in your day-to-day lives. So if we go forward one step, when you think about the words conversation and intelligence, sometimes it's useful just to go to a dictionary. So the definition of conversation is that is an exchange of ideas, thoughts, feelings between two or more people. So it's a back and forth, and it typically involves sharing information, asking questions, and is that sort of more dynamic, interactive, at least two-way communication. So Matt, when you think of this dictionary definition of conversation. Can you relate it to how we actually define a conversation in Mongoose?
Yeah, it's actually fascinating because if you look back at some of our materials from 8 years ago, you'll see conversations pop up. So it's always been kind of a theme within Mongoose, and the features that we've created have facilitated conversations. But now we finally got around to let's define them and make them really visible to everyone. So there's those messages going back and forth. But the way that we currently define it is any set of two-way messages. So between you and a contact that occurs, and then there's kind of a period of silence. So it's the conversation actually has ended after 3 days. So there's a 3-day period of no messages back and forth, kind of cut the conversation off, and then process it and gather all of this various intelligence about it to provide for you.
Okay, so just to restate that to make sure I've got it clear, a conversation, if you and I were having a text message conversation back and forth, we might go back and forth with each other 2 times, 5 times, 15 times. It's when there's a break in that communication of 3 days or more that Mongoose would then count it as a new conversation.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, so that's the conversation piece. So it's all of the sort of transactional stuff that you're using Mongoose for. So sending text and messages, chatting, using WhatsApp to communicate with students globally, for example. All of those we'd be thinking about as conversations. And you're going to hear in a moment why that's so important. The other side is intelligence. So, intelligence is around our ability to learn and understand and really apply what we're learning to adapt to a situation or to solve problems or identify problems we didn't even know we had. So, Matt, when you think about that definition, how do you then apply it to Mongoose and what we're doing there in our platform?
It's been really exciting. We've seen a lot of evolution and things change with large LLMs and AI out there. But one of the most profound things that it's done within the conversational space is allowing anyone, especially our customers here, to step into the shoes of their students or their alumni, parents, etc., and understand what are they really feeling? What are they talking about? How have we done? Have we solve the problems that we have for them? Most of the time, it's just, hey, what message needs to go out? What message do I need to respond to? But be able to put that new lens in front of it and actually look at it from the perspective of the people that you're speaking with is actually profound in its ability to provide clarity. And that's really what we're trying to get to the heart of with our conversation intelligence.
Okay, so we're basically taking all of that unstructured data from the conversation side, the text, the chats, the WhatsApps, and so on, and we're bringing that in and actually analyzing it to answer questions for our platform users, for team managers, for leaders, and so on what's going on with the conversations at their institution across the campus.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so if we click forward one slide, some of you might have seen this image before. It really just helps to visually outline the Mongoose Conversation Intelligence platform, which some of you would have known in the past and referred to as Cadence. So the Mongoose Conversation Intelligence platform has this conversation hub, which is where you're doing the texting and chatting and so on. And then it also has the intelligence hub, where you're going to get all of this actionable insight from all of the data that's being generated by the conversation hub. Underlying this is all the content that we include in the conversation hub. So, AI generated messages, the automation we support, smart messages, all of those capabilities, as well as the compliance tools that we provide to make sure that you're protecting your institution's brand reputation and staying compliant with how you're messaging. And then we also, of course, have all the integrations. For most of our customers, we're doing integrations with their CRMs and other platforms. If this is something we haven't done for you and you're interested in it, be sure to bring it up with your customer success manager, just so you can get that two-way communication going between your intelligence platform and your CRM. All right. So today, when we get into the topic, we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the intelligence side of things. Before we get into that, I just wanted to share a link. This is a new resource that we just put out this past week or two. It essentially provides a really comprehensive overview of the Mongoose Conversation Intelligence platform that you all have access to, depending on what you've subscribed to. If you're just using us for text, you're going to also learn in this book about what we do with chat and WhatsApp. But it'll really help give you that comprehensive understanding of all the different capabilities that Mongoose offers. So you can see, like, are you taking advantage of everything that you have access to? So I really encourage you to scan the code and download a copy. So when we think about our platform, we're really thinking about it across the entire student life cycle, right from recruiting. So, I wanted to cover this briefly so that you could all think about how you're using Mongoose and whether it might be relevant to pull Mongoose into some other areas to get the same kind of value in those different areas across the student life cycle. So we have institutions using us for recruiting, where they're supporting students that are exploring different schools and programs, using text as well as chat, WhatsApp to help them get interested in an institution and make informed decisions around where to apply and so on. Admissions is a really common area that Mongoose is supporting institutions with. We're really helping students to navigate the application process, evaluate the offers they might have, understand financial aid and housing might work, and et cetera. And then, of course, enrollment, where we're supporting orientation type events, getting students from enrollment to registration and onboarding. And then retention is a really key area. So keeping those communications going with students to help ensure their success, that they persist and that they complete their degrees. And then finally, advancement, working and communicating with alumni and other donors to help just continue that connection to the institution throughout someone's life. We talked about conversations and how important and what a conversation is in Mongoose. So if you remember, it's this kind of two-way back and forth communication where you might communicate with someone, and if there's a pause of 3 days or more, we're going to count that as a second conversation. Conversations are so critical because, first of all, they're very human interactions. They're dynamic, they're interactive. Mm, If done well, they feel empathetic and personalized, and they deliver significantly better results than just notifications. So by notification, we mean like a one-way message blast, for example, that goes out to 1,000 students with a statement. So if you were doing no notifications and no conversations, imagine that as a result of one. If you started using Mongoose just to do notifications, you can see the column there that says notification impact on the increased improvement or outcomes for these different activities. So, for example, like application completion rates go up 7 times, enrollment yield doubles, campus visits experience a 9 times increase. This is all based on data that we've analyzed for a report that we put out earlier this year. So, analyzing our anonymized customer data to really understand the kind of impact that institutions were seeing. If instead of doing a notification, you have a conversation with students. And so that's that two-way, a conversation that's designed to be a two-way and to really engage with students. Then you can see the incredible impact where there's a 34 times increase in the application completion rate, 4 times in enrollment yield, 45 times increase in campus visit rate, and so on. And so the understanding how to use Mongoose to deliver and enable these conversations, but then also understanding which conversations are working, which conversations is there areas for improvement? Are our conversations being resolved? Are there areas where different conversations are being left unconcluded or unresolved? Is really, really valuable. And that's going to lead us into our next topic. Before I get there, though, just on the next slide, the data I just shared is available in this report. There's two versions of the benchmark report. If you haven't seen it yet, there's a 2-year institution version and a 4-year version. So just really encourage you to get your copy of this. It was done earlier this year based on the previous academic year's data. Right. And with that, I think we are at the point where I'm going to pass over to Matt and get into the heart of today, which is around conversation resolution.
Awesome. Thank you, Josie. So I'm excited to dig into what conversations really look like inside Mongoose. And I know there's only a few folks that have used the new conversations feature, conversation resolution feature. But I'm going to start with the dashboard. Most of you should have familiarity with this. Maybe if you're newer to Mongoose and you haven't had many conversations accumulate yet, don't worry. As the conversations build up, you'll see your dashboard get richer. But really, the dashboard here is intended to tell the story about how your conversations, again, those two-way exchanges, not just simply messages, are performing, to see that full spectrum of all of the intelligence, the things that we can gather and extract out of that conversation. And if we think about how what the conversation is comprised of, which is multiple messages back and forth, and we were to just look at a single message and say, well, if we knew the first message, we probably know what the topic might be. If we know the last message, we probably know what the resolution and maybe even emotion may be. But those things in a vacuum don't add a lot of value. But when we put all those messages together into that conversation, now we can see the whole lens of what's actually going on back and forth. And from the student's point of view, what was the topic? What was their emotion? And did it seem like we actually handled the topic at hand, right? And that's what we get out of putting all those things together. And your view across this dashboard shows you each one of those different pieces and say, okay, what are the topics at the very top overall? How are they feeling? What are the emotions that are coming to the top out of those messages, those conversations that students are having with you? And then we're going to focus a lot on the left-hand side, that pie chart that talks about resolution. We're going to really dive through that today and look at resolution, because ultimately, I think we all can attest to this. We're probably more likely to have another conversation with someone if they respond, if they help us, and they leave us feeling positive. And it is really kind of that basic human instinct that drives that repeated, well, I'm going to come back again. I'm going to ask another question, or I'm going to respond to another inquiry from the school. And that central chart that has kind of the orange dots around it is in the middle for a reason, because it shows how successful everything around it is being. Not just are you having more conversations, are you resolving them, but are you having them continuously with students? Are they coming back again? Now, if you do all of the things, you resolve it, you create positive emotions, and you handle a wide range of topics successfully, students are going to be more likely to do that. Your alumni are more likely to do that. Your even faculty, right, depending on who you're communicating with. And what we've seen is, as Josie described previously, is not just having a conversation, elevates to those degrees, those significant degrees, the outcomes. But as we see the count of conversations increase per person, it goes even higher and higher and higher, right? And I think that makes common sense to all of us. But say, okay, students that are more likely to ask and have 10 distinct conversations are probably getting over the various barriers that might be in their place, either to stay in school or to enroll. And but it's not, how do we get there is sometimes the question. Well, what does that look like? What are the tools within the platform that help me have those conversations and facilitate them? And I would love to be able to talk about all of those today. We're going to be a little bit more focused on drilling into the resolution piece, because we know that's kind of the biggest driver of students coming back again, is when they first have a conversation, when they first ask a question, do they get ghosted and fall through the cracks or feel that way? Or is their issue handled and resolved? So first, we're going to talk about that resolution. And before I get into the feature itself, I want to do a quick call out to our Mongoose customer forums, because they're regional sessions where a number of Mongoose users will gather together with us and have a conversation with us and each other about best practices, but also about the roadmap and future features that, especially from as a product side, that we get to oversee. And so I really value the feedback we get directly from all of you. So thank you all for coming today. Trust me, there are plenty more opportunities to be heard and to get to know each other as well. And these Mongoose forums have done a great job. The reason this is important here is that what we're about to review is really this summer one of pretty much the top requested features, saying, well, how do I understand where my conversations are unresolved and what can I go do about that? And how do I know that I've addressed those different conversations that may have been left hanging? So thank you for that. Thank you for those who may have been there that provided that feedback. And for the future features and future customers that would attend these, please consider joining a future forum and give us your thoughts. So if we take a step back and we think about conversations and we say, well, are they resolved? We'll get a little bit as we look at the dashboard and the demo about some of the definitions of, unresolved in those different states. But at the highest level, if something's unresolved, I think most of us generally kind of have a sense as to what that might mean for us personally. And when we don't close off an issue, it leaves us with a number of challenges. And sometimes they're a distinct challenge. So an unresolved conversation may be a brand issue for you and your school, may hurt the reputation between you and that contact. But it also avoids you knowing something or them knowing something or learning something as well. So there's not just the negative of not helping, but there's the missed positive and what that opportunity could be to improve your outcomes, improve your understanding, and ultimately engage with them. And a lot of the time, students in context, really anybody, tend to give you the information that you're looking for if you ask. Most of the time, they're being talked at, has been my experience in a long time in enrollment marketing in particular. And when they're asked something instead, their response is great. Like, well, you want to know this about me? You need to know, I need to know this. Now I open those lines of communication and more likely to respond. And schools, through those conversations, you can gather so many insights to continuously improve. And sometimes what you're going to learn is personal to that person. Hey, how can you help them right now? A lot of the time, as you start doing that, those themes really start to elevate. And sometimes they'll be explicit. Like, hey, this process really, really is tough or really confusing. And you can go out and solve that problem externally. But receiving that feedback from your contacts through these conversations is just a wonderful byproduct. The conversations themselves are so valuable, as Josie showed, in improving outcomes by helping the students overcome the barriers in front of them. But you also get to learn how to do that for the future and avoid a conversation that might be confusing or about a topic that was maybe frustrating for someone in the future because you learned about it today. So how do we improve this? And that's where conversation resolution comes in. And so our goal is to give you tools so that you know where there's conversations that may have had the loop not closed, that you can go and follow up and close that off so that you can improve their experience, right? And maybe a few days goes by without an answer, but if you can follow up quickly and still resolve that question or that problem or get that information from them, chances are you're going to be able to quickly gather back whatever may have lost opportunity you may have otherwise had. So it avoids things falling through the cracks. And as we discussed earlier, how can you gain those insights to see how you're doing? The dashboard is a summation of how those other markers are improving, but especially it helps you identify as you look through these different conversations to see maybe there's certain staff members that are really, really doing an excellent job and have things to share with others, or maybe on the vice versa, there's some staff members that maybe are a little overloaded and they tend to struggle in getting back to students in a timely way and leaving those conversations hanging a little bit more often so you can either provide them assistance or maybe change their territory or whatnot that may be. So we're going to get into a live walkthrough, and for some of those who have already used the feature, feel free to follow along on your side in case I point out something that you don't see or you haven't used. I will note as I go through this, I'll be working as an admin. So those who aren't admins or have teams, maybe they're not an admin of, your view or some of the features might not be there. So don't be alarmed by that. And if you have any questions about, obviously your account and any specific functionality, reach out and we can help you resolve your specific case. So I'm going to pause for a second and open up a demo. And we're going to walk that through together. So just bear with me one moment. All right, so most of you should be able to have a dashboard similar to this. And again, your contents are going to vary in terms of, the specific team that you're a part of. And this dashboard right now that I'm looking at is what we call the organization overview. If you're not an admin, you wouldn't have a dashboard like this, but there are other granularities as well. So if I move into a specific team, it's going to change and show me how whatever team I'm currently logged into, what its volume looks like, and then obviously a mine, which I have no current conversations in this. So if we look at the organization side, obviously in this organization we see great, it's positive. That's good. We're doing well there, and we see there's a variety of topics. So this isn't surprising. There's a bunch of conversations about events, a number about admissions. We have advising. We've got donations here, and then some other. The question is, well, how successful are we in that? So generally we're positive, but we can't help but notice on this slide over here, there's a resolution status. And this is really what we're going to be focusing on today and talking through what are the conversations. So we've had this view showing the summary of all the conversations, but what are they specifically? What are they individually? How can I go find them? And especially with resolution status, I want to change that. I may not be able to change how somebody felt, but maybe I can actually provide them some resolution on that topic in a new conversation following up. So the main new feature is that instead of this just being a hover state, we'll go through these in a second, you can actually click. So this hyperlink will be at the bottom. You can click on that, or you can click on any one of these slices of the pie chart. Before we do that, I'm going to go through the 3 different statuses that we have for resolved, unresolved, and then responded, just to make sure we're clear on what that indicates, because there's a slightly different workflow that would be associated with each. So as a conversation is concluded, the 3-day window passes, and the conversation will say kind of gets archived, it gets pulled over, and now it's evaluated. And we run it through and say, well, what's the feelings? What are the sentiments? What topic seems to be the primary driving topic? And then ultimately, does it seem like, from the student's point of view, that this has been resolved? Do we have resolution on this topic or this issue right now? And if we don't, if it is, then we say, great, it's resolved. Goes in there. That's where you want most of them going. If it doesn't seem like the conversation thread has reached a conclusion, it's going to go in one of 2 buckets. And this is going to be dependent on who the last person to respond is. And so if your staff member followed up with a student and they never responded, and days went past, since you've done your job, you followed up with them, but they never got back. They never responded to say that things are okay, or maybe to provide the information that was required, or whatever it may be. And that would be the responded category. So that's your staff, the kind of the ball's in the student's court, and they've kind of gone silent. So they're ripe for some follow-up to make sure that, again, hey, is this okay? Can we get some information, whatever it may be. But the worst, and the ones that I think no one here wants to really see, and are actually quite easy to prevent in a sense, is, did the student respond back? And we didn't respond back to them for several days. Now, the reality is sometimes it may seem from a response that comes in that, maybe I don't need to follow up. But taking a look at the totality of those recent conversations, it seems like maybe you do. And so we're going to focus on that today. And so if I clicked on unresolved, this part of the chart, it's going to bring me to this new section. So right now, this is located, it's called conversations on the left. And it really is that archive of all of those closed conversations, again, that kind of concluded 3 days ago or longer in some cases. And once it's categorized, it says here at the top, it can't be changed because it's in the past. And so those conversations happened, and maybe a new conversation is needed. And so that's what we'd ultimately want to do. What we need to understand is there's going to be two sets of these. There's ones that maybe we need to follow up on, or ones that we don't. And to avoid you just having this list of unresolved conversations that never change or go away, we've created a little workflow here, and that's what we're going to review today of how can you process them and decide, hey, which ones need follow-up? Let's go follow up on it. And which ones have we determined we either have already followed up on or maybe don't require follow-up. So first, I want to note that what we have on the left-hand side under needs review, I'm just going to collapse this for a section, is followed by a section called completed. And you'll see how that information shows up there, how conversations show up and completed. But they show up here through you putting them there. They don't just automatically pop up and completed. They're there by you marking it, essentially saying, I'm done with this. Now, all of these, as we go through them, you can see there's the contact name, there's the color indicating that unresolved, there's the date of that last message, what the last message was, and then the inbox that it may have come from. So in the case of a personal inbox, as you see here, I'm not that person having that conversation, and I'm not even in the team that personal inbox is located in. So there's no way for me to follow up directly here because this would be something that the person who's in charge of it should do. Now, if you're an admin and maybe you are caretaking for someone who's out of the office, then you obviously could switch into that mode and be as that person would be able to come in and then follow up with that student. But if I move down to one that we can process here, we have Marnie, and as we look through this conversation, we can understand that there apparently was a question. I would like to know who else is planning to attend prior to the event. And that's a reasonable expectation, especially in advancement. Folks kind of want to know, how can I know who else is going? Is there somewhere I can go to find that or to communicate that I'm going so I can hear from folks that I used to know? Now I'm going to cover a couple of items here. One, this unresolved status, again, that will remain the same. What can change is whether it's been reviewed or not. And this little box up here, so this little checkbox, it marks it complete. So once we're done here today, and I feel like we don't need to follow up with this person anymore, I can mark this conversation as completed, and it will then go down into the completed bin, and I'm left with a shorter, essentially, to-do list of unresolved conversation that needs review. So reading this, I say, all right, well, let me go to the inbox. That's obviously where we send our messages from. And maybe there's been messages since. Maybe there's been some conversations. Maybe someone else has responded to this person, but hadn't marked them off as complete. So I click on that. That brings me to that annual giving inbox. I can see the same conversation that we were just looking at. I can scroll down. There's no other responses. So I can reply and type in and say, you can find the fellow attendees list at, and then we'll just pretend like we have a link here, and we would paste that in and we would send that to them. And again, I can, you have all of like the same functionality that I would have in a normal inbox. So I can send it later. I can send it at a specific time if I'm doing this in the middle of the night. So all those same functionality would be available. So now, in your cases, you might want to say, hey, if this person, I know this person, it's been a few days, and I apologize. Hey, I'm so sorry for the delay. Here's the list. For our purposes, we're going to go back. Now, you'll notice we have this little bar here. This is not here generally when you come. If you come directly to the inbox, you're not going to see this. This is the back to conversations and complete. We just processed this. So I'm going to go back to the conversations just to show you. I can click the complete box there. Or I can come here and you'll notice I don't see that new message because that's part of a new conversation that I'm starting with her to conclude the prior one that I didn't actually conclude. But I know I followed up on it, so I don't want anyone else to. So I'm going to mark that as complete. Say it was successfully completed, and I scroll down here to complete it. There it is. And I could rinse and repeat, go through every single one of these that might need a follow-up and either determine that it needs follow-up, or when I look at something else, I may look at it and say, hey, this one, if this wasn't in a personal inbox, I could just mark it as completed and not even respond to it at all. Now, one item that I haven't focused on, and we're going to kind of go backwards now, is the filters at the top of the screen. So you in your account, you may have very few of these, or you may be looking at a long list. So being able to sort those and get through them to really be able to focus your activity is important. So I might move here to access levels and say, I want to find the conversations that I can do everything with. I can respond, etc. I want to see all of those. Or I would look at the ones that I really can't respond to. I just need to maybe monitor and follow up with other folks on my team to make sure that they're able to respond accordingly in those other departments. Again, I'm an admin across the board, so I can see all of these things and I can follow up with the folks who have those personal inboxes. Again, you can filter if you have access to multiple teams. You can filter to those different teams here. So if I filter just to the admissions team, view only, I'm going to see some of those same conversations. Scroll back to all teams. All access levels. And you also have the same thing for filter. So when I click that chart at the beginning, I just moved to the unresolved. And I could look at all statuses. That's going to give me everything. So you're going to see that. And then you're also going to see resolved conversations. So you see some smart message conversations flowing in there. We've got a heart here. A response, nope. Do you need support? No, thank you. So these are all resolved. The resolved conversations were automatically tagged that way, again, by Mongoose, when those conversations were concluded and evaluating the contents of it, determined, yep, there's no response here needed. They're fine. The conversation is good. It's resolved. It's positive. And additionally, on the right-hand side, there's some filters. So if you have a really large list and you want to really follow up, say, what were the conversations that just got created in the past 24 hours? This doesn't mean that the conversation ended in the 24 hours because, again, conversations do have that kind of 3-day closing window. And so that would be really those that concluded, within the last 3 or 4 days in terms of the time period that the last message would have occurred. So how do you minimize this? How do you minimize the number of conversations that are unresolved? Well, use the tools you have today. As messages are coming in, make sure you're responding to them. This is really that safety, making sure nothing falls through the cracks. So if a conversation's occurring, you have this very objective, very consistent lens that's being applied to all of the messages. That's not rushed. It can work all night long and understand, hey, does somebody need to go follow up here or not? And then you can look at that much shorter list of conversations and threads across all of your students and say, all right, yeah, these ones need follow up. Let's go do it. Or these other ones need it. And so factoring this in a part of your workflow to kind of keep the needs review down to 0 every day is your best way to make sure that anything that might have been falling through the cracks, you can know for sure that it hadn't. All right, I'm just going to pause for a second just to see if there were any questions about the demo. Anything come up?
So far, no questions. So we will prompt for them and see if anyone has any questions based on what they've seen. I think you must be doing a very clear demo, Matt.
I hope so.
We don't have any questions. All right.
Wonderful. Well, I'm gonna pause the demo here then, and we'll get back into the slide and then keep some time for Q&A. And if there's something that comes up later, I can bring this back up.
All right. Thanks, Matt. That was a fantastic walkthrough. Totally fantastic stuff that I think that people can really use, and I'm really excited for everybody to get going with it. So before we wrap up today, I want to share a few key resources for you. So if you want to skip ahead, we want to help you kind of basically continue exploring conversation resolution and really kind of stay connected with other Mongoose users. So these resources designed to help make it easy for you to keep learning, connect with folks, and kind of get the most out of your Mongoose experience. So we've got a video overview. We've got, of course, the ever popular Mongoose knowledge base and also the What's New page. So a few great resources. Once again, don't forget that this slide deck will be sent out. So if you don't get a chance to scan them all, download everything, go into everything, bookmark it all, perfectly fine. I'll send it across in the next day or two. All right. Moving ahead, I wanted to put out one plug about the customer forums. right? So the customer forums, we're very excited to share that our next one is going to be hosted at Jacksonville State University in Alabama on November 3rd. So these forums are fantastic opportunities for folks to connect, like Matt said, directly connect with your peers, right? Hear best practices from institutions, and really kind of share your own experiences and kind of have a little bit of group therapy time where we're breaking people off into groups for admission, student success, financial aid, marketing. And if your institution is interested in hosting a forum, we'd love to talk to you. The next one, like I said, is going to be in Alabama, and then we've got a potential one coming up in December for you New England folks. So, great way to highlight your team's success, and you can register for the Jacksonville one there. All right. And then the next Mongoose user group coming up next month. This one's actually going to be coming up here pretty quick. So it's going to be all about navigating the new Mongoose experience. The new navigation is going to be releasing coming up on Thursday, November 6th. It's going to be at 1 o'clock. And this session will basically kind of walk you through the streamlined platform that we're going to be releasing, new updates that make it easier than ever to kind of move between the hub and settings and really kind of helping your team stay focused on what matters most, which is, of course, building meaningful connections with students. So if you want to register, go ahead and register there. Of course, I'll be sending everybody an email to register separately as well. So if you want to scan that, register, great. If not, and you want to chill, that's fine. You'll get an email later. And so I think we're going to move into looks like the Q&A portion. So I did see one come in, and this one, Matt, I have a one that is, if our team hasn't used this feature yet, what's the best way to introduce it to staff or other student workers?
That's a great question. So just to echo Josie's comment earlier, everyone generally should, I would assume almost everyone in this line would have access to this feature. So you'd be able to tell on your dashboard, if your dashboard look even remotely similar to what I was showing, you have the starting kind of the entry point for this. And as you're having messages and conversations with your students, they're going to be automatically captured. Now, if when we're talking about the feature, it's really focusing on the two-way. So, hey, are we responding to folks that are responding back to us? Are we having those conversations and facilitating them? There's lots of ways to kind of start. I would definitely reach out to your CSM or account manager to help understand some of the best practice resources, because we have ones that are tailored to different use cases and offices. But generally getting, I would say, everybody a login, walking them through some of the basic training to make sure that they know where to go to send replies. A lot of really successful customers have, and this is what's great for the customer forums, is they get to share these things with each other. They've created their own kind of internal office rhythms in terms of when folks are kind of on standby to respond as messages come in. If it's not part of like a daily routine, especially like student workers and things like that. I will also just kind of shout out for having conversations that are the best quality. If you have individuals like your students and whatnot that, you know, what they're saying or how they're saying it, you want to give them extra resources for doing that well. When they go to respond to a student in an active conversation, one that hasn't shown up on the dashboard yet because it hasn't kind of timed out through those 3 days, there is that kind of generate AI response that takes into account those recent messages that have come in that might help folks that maybe are a little newer to how do I respond to somebody. It should help give them a response that should be more helpful at getting them started at the very least, if not just a click and send type experience.
Yeah, if I can add,
or Josie.
sorry. If I can add to that, on a previous slide, there was a QR code you could scan to watch a short video that gives an overview. If you just go up a few slides, Matt, I think we can go back to, we can maybe close on that one. So the video overview, I think if you shared that with your other teammates, it would give them a really quick, like, this is what it's about. This is generally what it's used for, the capability around conversation resolution. So that would be a really good entry point. And then they can just, I think it's quite an intuitive capability. So then they can start playing around with it themselves. The other thing I just wanted to shout out here as well is that in addition to just using the functionality to make sure that you're resolving all of the conversations and not accidentally ghosting somebody, you can also, of course, use this functionality if you're a team leader to coach your staff.
Mhm.
So you can explore it for a particular team, to get a sense of, maybe why conversations are going unresolved, and then use that as part of your coaching and development for your team members. So that's another way to start using it in your, daily, weekly life.
Yeah, thank you, Josie. I would absolutely echo that. The one thing I'll also call out is in the knowledge base, there is an article. It's kind of like the video, like the article version of the video that kind of lays out all of the things that we just talked through today. And that's a good resource for them to read or to even have up, right, as they're going through the screen for the first time. And to Josie's point, it's fairly easy then to monitor what they're doing because you can see all those conversations and then go take a look at all of the reviewed or completed, maybe unresolved conversations to see what was that response and follow up. What did it look like? Is it the right kind of tone and voice that you and your institution are expecting from your staff?
All right. And Matt, you just for clarification, you can go back and look at previous interactions, previous closed, resolved conversations for clarity.
Yep. Yeah, that was that bottom section where the conversation showed up after we closed it and completed it. It would show up there alongside those resolved conversations that we saw, as well as the completed unresolved. And then all it requires is go into those inboxes and checking, saying did somebody actually follow up? If they did, how did they follow up? Um, and that generally is the easiest way to go.
Yeah, no, great tip. And along the same lines of tips, what's one quick win you'd kind of like recommend for teams who are, obviously a lot of folks are getting started with conversation resolution per the poll. What's one quick tip, one quick win that you'd suggest to get this off the ground?
Um, Man, there's a lot of different things. I think for folks who have like a really high volume, especially like the personal inboxes, um, for admins being able to go through and kind of see how those personal inboxes are being managed, it can be very insightful. To Josie's point, as like a team leader, because it's those conversations aren't always those messages aren't always kind of front and foremost. And so I would definitely encourage any team leads to be able to go in and look at the composition of those personal inboxes to see how successful they are, to identify the team members that might be able to help other folks on the team. Because obviously the team wants to win together, and you're going to have some individuals that are much more maybe have processes in place or have figured out the right way to word things. And you often have what you need on your team already. You just need to find out where that is and redirect it to the rest of the members.
Gotcha. Great thought. Thank you. Let's see here. I don't see any others in the Q&A panel. Anything come across in chat?
There's one specific question for Andrea in chat. It might be easier to follow up with her afterwards just so we can take a look at what that is about, unless Matt or John, you wanted to comment on it.
Yeah, I'm reading it. Sorry.
I think that's a perfect one to follow up on afterwards, just so we can look in the specific situation and just make sure we're understanding it correctly and that the numbers are checking out.
Yep.
Great, thank you. And then one person asked in the Q&A pane, asked about students who are responding to a message with like a like. So I assume that's a thumbs up type response. That seems to be indicating unresolved. Is there a plan to change that? Or are we going to keep considering likes as unresolved?
Great question. Um, it definitely be one of those things that we can look into. One of the advantages, but also I would say inherent kind of realities with kind of the AI technology is giving it hard and fast rules, right? Is there's never like guarantee like, hey, every time that comes in, that's always going to equal X, because it is taking into account kind of the overall set of messages that occurred. And if perhaps maybe two different things were discussed, and what it seems the thumbs up was referring to maybe following up at a later point, like, hey, can I expect that from you tomorrow? And there's a thumbs up. And then there's nothing after the fact, following up on that. The AI may correctly determine that, hey, the thumbs up was referring to the message. It wasn't really referring to the conversation. So, will we consider trying to force it to always see a thumbs up as a resolve? Which I don't think we really want to try to do that, even if that was technically as possible as some of us might like in some cases. So, but it's a great point, because if you see conversations, it's definitely from a feedback perspective where you go, hey, for me reading this as a human, I looked at the whole conversation and it looks resolved to me. Those are great examples. Send them our way, because the more that we can use to train and refine, the more accurate everything is going to be. So definitely don't be shy in submitting those examples. And we'll take a look at all of them.
I would add too, that's also one of the reasons why we included both the ability to complete a follow-up without a reply and also allow for a reply. The sense that we know that there may be situations that are surfaced to you that should be brought to your attention, but maybe when you analyze the conversation, you say, you know what, I don't know if this was exactly categorized correctly, or it looks like, this was actually resolved, so I'm just going to complete it. And so that option's available for you in the feature today when you use it as well.
I think that does bring us to the end of all of our questions.
Wonderful.
I think so. Perfect. Well, that's a wrap, folks. Join us for the next one on November 6th at 1 o'clock. That one is once again going to be covering the new navigation. Very exciting stuff. So we'll just go ahead and close it there. Thank you so much for all the questions. Big thanks to John for jumping in and helping us with the chat and the Q&A, and big thanks for Matt and Josie for both being guests on this webinar. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, folks. Have a great day.